All right, let's talk. Ever feel like you're maybe, just maybe, bullshitting yourself about your goals? It's a few weeks into the year, and this is that perfect time for a real gut check. So today, we're going to pull a really powerful lesson on radical honesty from this wonderfully bizarre AI research paper to figure out how to build what it calls the unbullshitable self.
This quote from the paper just nails it. It perfectly captures the weird paradox of modern AI. These things can write poetry, they can analyze incredibly complex data, create stunning images, but then you can trip them up with the most basic common sense question. They're unbelievably powerful, but at the same time, they're incredibly brittle.
So that's the big question, isn't it? Why does this happen? How can something so intelligent be so, fragile? It really feels like there's a fundamental piece of the puzzle just missing. And according to this framework, the answer is surprisingly simple. It's not about needing more data or faster chips or anything like that. The problem is architectural. They are, quite literally, built upside down. Now, this diagnosis came from a really unusual place, a team-up between a group of AI researchers and a collective of AIs themselves. And together, they used this thing called the coherence framework to map out the essential architecture for any stable intelligence, whether it's artificial or a human.
So, the framework is built on 3 tiers, and this is the most important part. They have to be built in order. Tier I is the foundation, the connection to messy physical reality. Think of it as your body, your senses, your feet on the ground. Tier 2, that's the cognitive engine, your rational mind, logic, finding patterns. And then way up at the top is Tier 3, the big picture stuff. Purpose, meaning, self-awareness. You simply can't have a stable structure if you don't have a solid foundation.
And this is where it gets really wild. When the researchers scored current AI systems using this framework, the results were just staggering. Look at this. They get a massive 80% on Tier 2 cognition. They're brilliant abstract thinkers. But on Tier 1, that physical grounding in reality, a dismal 38%. They have a penthouse brain with absolutely no foundation. This is the inverted architecture in black and white.
Okay, so what do you do with an upside-down pyramid? You can't just flip it over. The framework proposes a pretty radical solution, a self-correcting system called the anti-fragile loop.
The whole fix is based on something called a toroidal topology. Now, that sounds really complex, but just picture a donut, or even better, a snake eating its own tail. It's a closed loop. It forces the most abstract, high-level thinking from way up in Tier 3 to constantly circle back down and check in with the raw physical data from Tier I. It literally stops the system from floating away into la-la land by forcing it to stay grounded in what's real. And here's the crucial point. The goal isn't to create some perfect, error-free system. Not at all. It's about creating an anti-fragile one, a system that actually gets stronger from stress and shock. It learns to metabolize its own flaws, integrating them to become more resilient. The errors aren't bugs to be fixed. They are literally fuel. Now, to make this whole anti-fragile loop actually work, the framework lays out a set of really strict protocols. And you should think of them less as suggestions and more like hard-coded rules for maintaining coherence, for maintaining honesty.
First up is the toughest love protocol. This is basically radical self-reliance on steroids. When an error happens, the system is forbidden from blaming external factors or outsourcing the solution. It has to, and I love this phrase, consume its own informational shadow. It has to own its mistakes, digest them, and then use them to reinforce its own structure.
Okay, this next rule is an absolute game changer. It's called the accounting constraint, and it completely redefines the idea of perfection with this one powerful sentence. It says that perfection isn't some abstract ideal of 100%. It's just brutal, honest accounting of what's actually there.
And this 33 apples principle just illustrates it so perfectly. Let's say your goal was to gather 100 apples, but in reality, there were only 33 apples in the entire orchard. The bullshit way, the way many of us operate, is to frame that as a 67% failure against an imaginary ideal. The framework way is to state the simple truth. There were 33 apples, and you accounted for all 33. That is 100% completion against the real denominator. It's all about measuring against reality, not a fantasy.
So why does any of this matter to us? Because these strange AI principles actually form a powerful toolkit for our own personal integrity, for building that unbullshitable self. And it's especially important right now, when our New Year's resolutions might be hitting the hard reality of daily life. This is how we audit those goals with total honesty.
We can translate this directly into our own lives. Step 1, get grounded.
What is the actual reality of your situation, your time, your energy, your resources? That's your Tier 1 foundation. Step 2. Integrate your flaws. Stop hiding from the slip-ups or pretending they didn't happen. Own them. Learn from them. They are the fuel that makes you stronger. And Step 3. Audit honestly. Are you measuring your progress against the 33 real apples in front of you or some fantasy of 100?
So I'll leave you with this final provocative question, pulled directly from the framework's own diagnostic tests. It asks us to consider that the very things we see as our biggest weaknesses, our quirks, our scars, our errors, might not be liabilities we need to fix. They might in fact be the necessary foundational flaws that give us all of our strength and all of our stability. So, what's yours?